Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. To understand the entire situation, you guys will need some context. So I will start off by explaining how the relationship between me and my brother, my mom, and my dad, and all four of us as a family was. So my brother, Jackson, 22, and I, 16, male, were always super close, even with our age difference. We were like best friends. We had a lot in common and had a really strong bond, so I always felt like I would always have my brother by my side if something ever happened. As for my parents, their relationship had always been a little rocky. Nothing out of the ordinary as far as I knew, but it always seemed like my parents had a lot to disagree on. They were really different people, so their opinions on things would often clash. They would have some arguments here and there, but nothing crazy or out of the ordinary that had traumatized me or my brother. One thing that came out of this was how much closer it had brought me and my brother to each other, which is why what happened devastated me so much. It was completely out of nowhere and very much unexpected. It was when my brother left home, when he was 18, it hit me like a rock. No, it wasn't just him leaving home for undergraduate education, he just left. It was the end of high school for him. He received his diploma and he lived with us throughout his summer break. Hell, he even discussed his college and further education plans with my parents and I. I vividly remember the conversation we had where he dumbed down what being an engineer meant. He joked about how he'll make a lot of money and buy me a lot of presents and candy. Hearing that had made my parents and I laugh a lot. Unfortunately, that day never came because when it came time that he left for college, he didn't just not leave temporarily, he was just gone. We only found this out as he had stopped answering our calls and texts completely once he reached where he was supposed to. This was shocking and devastating to my parents. They tried their very best to get a hold of them. During this time, my parents' relationship had started deteriorating as well. The constant back and forth between the cops, the college my brother claimed to have left the state for, and lawyers, my parents had started blaming each other for what my brother had done. Their already bad relationship took a turn for the worse here, and they really didn't want to get divorced. They wanted to stay and raise me until I was an adult, and honestly, I'm still not sure why, because they only made my life miserable by staying together. Well, my parents tried to get a hold of my brother for 6 months until the cops did find him eventually in a completely different state than he had told us he was in. According to the cops, my brother wanted nothing to do with us and had asked them to reveal no information about himself to us. Since he was 18 and paying for his own college through his scholarships, there wasn't much we could do. The day I found out this news, I was heartbroken. It was like I had gotten the news I wanted to find out if my brother was well and good, but at what cost? He obviously wasn't going to come back. What devastated me was all the false promises he had made to me. It was like I felt the worst sort of betrayal. And from that day onwards, my life started sloping downhill. My parents' relationship deteriorated on the daily as they constantly fought over my brother. They practically made me a stranger in my own house as their conversations would land on nothing but my brother. My performance in school started getting worse as a result, and I have been living these past couple of years as a shell of myself. I recently turned 16. I did nothing special. No one even really remembered my birthday, and honestly, I didn't expect much. But to stay in peace, but I guess my brother didn't even want to give me that after all that he had done, because on the morning of my 16th birthday itself, I heard our doorbell ring. Thinking it was some package from Amazon, I opened it, and my jaw immediately dropped on the floor as I saw my brother standing on the other side. It almost took me a couple of minutes to even realize it was him. I looked up and down to make sure I wasn't dreaming, but his voice gave me assurance that I actually didn't want. It was a shocker to say the least, but I let him inside the house and called my parents downstairs. My parents were just as shocked as I was to see him. Jackson stayed quiet throughout the entire ordeal because I guess he was only here to ruin my life one more time. So after grabbing some breakfast, we sat down to talk. Honestly, I had expected some sort of closure finally, the real reason why the brother, who I had trusted the most, had left me behind for God knows what reason, but he had completely different plans. Jackson handed my dad a box that was wrapped. Although it was quite weird, my dad opened it with a curious look on his face. His reaction soon changed from confusion to shock, and from shock to anger real quick, and my mother and I just kept looking at each other. Wow, is all he could mutter out as he placed the box down, and my mom and I took a look at it. What I saw next shocked me. The box was filled with pictures of my dad's best friend, James, and my mom. It also consisted of a letter that I picked up immediately and read out everything. My parents had started arguing at that point while I read the letter, and by the time I got to the end of it, my hands began shaking and tears started flowing down my cheeks. I stood there reading paragraphs after paragraphs of my brother confessing how he found my mom and James having an affair and how he had overheard them talking about how I was potentially their child. He was too scared to say anything and so decided to run away. I was dumbfounded at this discovery. I was shaking and crying at that point, and my brother just sat there numb. That is when I realized the last bit of family had broken apart. The argument went on for a while, and out of nowhere, my dad first told my brother to get out. Jackson told him that he wanted to speak more, come to a conclusion, but my dad was having none of it. He was enraged, blaming Jackson for not telling him this any time earlier, so much so that he quite literally physically kicked him out of the house. Then their argument continued for hours as I slowly crawled back into my room, and right then my mom came into my room telling me to pack up my things because apparently, according to her, it was about time that I left the house like my brother because, after all, I was the one who ruined their marriage. I started crying once again and packed up my things because, after all, she was right. I was done living there, and so I packed up my things and just left, unsure where to go. This is where I'm at currently, practically homeless, typing this while using the Wi Fi at a Starbucks, unsure where to go. I don't have any friends, particularly that would take me in. Not any relatives I'm close to, nor have a lot of money that let me rent out an apartment. What should I do here? My parents, too, refused to pick up my calls. Should I go to the cops? AITA, any advice would be much appreciated. I decided to go to the cops, and they made me list out my relatives close by. I gave them a list of a couple of the names of relatives and friends. I didn't name my brother in that list since I honestly didn't want his help, even if he came to me to offer it on his own. After everything he has done, I have no respect left for him or my family. It feels like today is the day I have become an orphan, and it hurts me even more to know that it's all happening while my family is alive and well. I haven't felt so lonely in a long while. Even though I have a roof to live in, it's like I know I'm not really wanted here. I'm currently living with my maternal aunt, who, like I said, doesn't really want me here. It's been 2 days since I've been here, and I've already overheard her speak to my mom and her other sisters on the phone about me and my brother and how we've been nothing but a burden to them. Calling this a heartbreak would be an understatement because I am literally done with my life. It feels like everything that can possibly go wrong is going wrong, and I am more lost than I ever could be. My parents currently are under investigation over my report, and I honestly don't want to return home, even if they're forced to take me in. I'm not sure if this will be my last update, but I will try my best to do so as soon as possible. I had posted on this subreddit 8 months ago, and with everything going on, quite literally forgot about this post. It is only today that I felt like I was stable enough to do anything, so I came on here to thank you all and give you all this update. Basically, after I started living with my aunt, within the first week itself, my brother tracked me down and came over to visit me. I was shocked and honestly kind of annoyed because I didn't want him to make my life any more miserable than it already was, and I told him so. He looked confused and then asked me if mom and dad hadn't told me about him coming to pick me up, when apparently, according to my mom, I threw a fit over this situation and wanted to leave the house ASAP. I was dumbfounded hearing this and immediately told him the reality. Jackson was just as shocked as me and held me in his arms before pulling out a small wrapped box from his pocket. I was immediately nervous once again because, as you all know, the last time I had opened a box, it felt like Pandora's box. But I knew I had to do so, and I did. Upon opening the box, I saw a key, and underneath that there was a note that said, "Welcome home." I was quite confused and looked at him as he explained to me how the sole purpose of him returning back was to take me into his apartment. I immediately began tearing up and hugged him super tight, instantly feeling guilty for all the resentment I had built towards him. Ever since then, we have been trying to rebuild our relationship through communication and therapy. My brother has dragged my parents to court and they are ready to give up my custody while paying some money for my expenses. Honestly, at this point, I don't even want that from such horrible people. As long as I'm kept far away from them, I'm all good. As for my brother, he finally sat me down and explained the reason why he just left instead of telling Dad everything that ever went down. He told me that he was scared of their reaction, and he was especially scared of the fact that they would kick me out of the house. So he decided to leave until he could get stable for himself and come to get me out of here. He talked about how now that he thinks about it, it was a bit of a stupid idea back then. In his 18-year-old mind, it all sounded right, and honestly, I really get it. If I were put in a similar position, I would come up with a plan similar to my brother, so I'm not really going to blame him. As long as we have each other's support once again, we're all good. And honestly, so far, I'm only seeing good things coming through, like me befriending my brother's girlfriend. It's like I now have myself a brother and a sister who care about me so much. It is truly heartwarming and refreshing, and I cannot thank you all enough for tagging along in this journey. NTA, but run to the cops. I would honestly rather get placed in the system than be with such mentally draining family. I'm so sorry things have to be this way for you, OP. The adults in your life are truly horrible. NTA, why do I have a feeling that the brother wanted to say more, but just left because of the dad? I would give the cops his contact just in case. I really hope everything turns out to be okay for you. I'm a 17-year-old female, and our school year began on Monday. Last school year, I had two friend groups, but a girl named Laurie joined the second group and bullied me. She was overly bitchy to me for no reason. Like, we would be sitting at the table, and Laurie would announce, "Oh, Matt texted me that the girl next to me was sexy." Then would turn to me and say, "Obviously, he's not talking about you, Chloe. Drop the ponytail, and maybe you won't look like a boy." Laurie would also purposely bump into me and laugh when I fell. But the one time a teacher called her out, Laurie lied it was an accident and didn't get in trouble. People in the group would laugh or join in whenever Laurie bullied me. Even this one person, who I believed was one of my best friends, told me it wasn't a big deal and to just grow up and learn to take a joke. I realized this friend group would always value Laurie more than me, so I cut them all off and only hang out with my non toxic friend group now. I would run into Laurie sometimes in the school bathrooms, but every time she would refuse to look at me and then start hysterically laughing with her friends after I got into the stall. I just learned to ignore Laurie. One Friday, I left class and was going home when I saw Laurie sitting on the steps with her face in her hands. I tried giving her as much space as possible and going up the steps without her noticing me, but then Laurie came up to me saying she needed help. Her after school tutoring place has a van to pick up kids, but today the van left without her and she forgot her phone at home, so she was freaking out. I reminded Laurie how rude she always was to me and why she was asking me for help. Laurie started saying how her parents were going to be mad at her and she's having a really hard time right now because they're divorcing. I have divorced parents myself. They split up when I was 2, so it doesn't bother me. I know divorce hurts for most kids, and I felt a little bad for Laurie, but I was mostly angry that she didn't apologize to me yet, was still expecting me to drop everything and comfort her after she treated me like trash. I told Laurie that, "Dude, I really don't care. Go to the main office and ask them for help. My parents are waiting for me." The parent thing was a lie, but I just wanted to get away. I told my dad and brother, Tom, about what happened during dinner. My dad said he was proud of me for standing up to Laurie and that I don't owe bullies anything. But Tom told me after dinner that even though Laurie was a bully, she's going through a hard time. Tom's older and the divorce had a big impact on him. And she didn't have anyone else to turn to, and telling Laurie I really don't care was a bit too mean. He said I should have been more forgiving to Laurie because we could have become real friends after it. Tom then said even if Laurie was still a bully, part of being a good person is to treat others well even if they don't reciprocate. I don't agree with Tom, but I've thought about this all weekend. So, AITA? NTA, your dad is right, and your brother can kick rocks. This girl was physically abusive and honestly doesn't deserve pity. My mom has me, 16-year-old female, and my brothers Nico, 17, and Shay, 18, with our dad. He died on my 5th birthday really suddenly. Mom was young and had the three of us, and she ended up meeting our stepdad less than a year later. I think it was about 2 years after my dad died that she introduced him to us as her boyfriend, and they married fast after that. At the time, mom and my stepdad wanted him to adopt us and to change our last names to his so we could be a legal family and share a family name. We had said no, but they went through the process for the adoption. And when it came time for court, the judge took us aside and we spoke to him and expressed that we did not want to be adopted or to have our last name changed. It's not something I remember the best because at the time I was really upset, but the end result was the judge turned down the adoption request and the change of name request. My grandma said that the judge told my mom and stepdad that he didn't want to leave us feeling even more robbed of our dad by taking away his name and his ties to us legally. After all that, my stepdad tried so hard to get us to start calling him dad. He always called us his kids, his daughters, sons, etc. But he made a real emphasis on how much he wanted to be our dad and how he wanted to feel us accept him in that kind way. Mom would sit and tell us how we were blessed to have two dads, one in heaven who looked down on us and one who was with us on earth and could raise us and be the parent we needed. She said it would be such a positive thing to embrace him as our dad. My brothers and I never did call him dad. Mom had more kids with our stepdad and they called him dad, but it was always a problem that we didn't. My oldest brother graduated last year and he moved out soon after. He graduated early and there were some things that went down which resulted in mom and stepdad bringing Nico and me to therapy with them. 4 weeks ago, during therapy, my mom and stepdad brought up how tired he is of feeling like he raised us for nothing because we never show him the love he believes he deserves, and we don't show him the respect he wants by denying him the title of dad. They said he is very close to leaving. So mom asked if either of us would consider trying to be more open to the idea. We would at least refer to him as dad to others, even if we don't call him dad to his face. I said I would never be okay with that. My brother, too. Mom cried, and my stepdad, well, I think that was a breaking point for him. It feels like their marriage is all but over, and deep down, I know both of them blame me and my brothers. I hate seeing my mom so upset. My stepdad can't hide the fact he's angry with us over it. AITA? NTA, they tried to force the adoption down your throats when none of you wanted it. And now he says this is a deal breaker for the marriage? If that's true, he never really wanted a marriage. He just wanted to be a dad.